So anyways, Rob, KD1CY, I'll let you do the introduction, but Rob is our Eastern Mass ARES section of music. You know, that's why I always say SEC, because I can't say Sections Emergency Coordinator. Anyways, Rob, why don't you take it away, and everybody else, we should make sure that we mute ourselves until Rob maybe will open things up for questions later on. So Rob, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to those that don't already know who you are, but go ahead and take it away.
All right, well, I'll say good evening to everybody in the K1USN group. This is Rob Macedo, KD1CY, the Eastern Mass ARES Section Emergency Coordinator and the SKYWARN Coordinator for National Weather Service Norton, and it's good to talk with everybody here virtually. I've done a few club presentations now virtually since COVID is on the scene and has changed everything, and probably will into at least the first part of next year. And we'll see what happens as we get to the spring and summer and fall months. Hopefully we'll see the transition hopefully more permanently back to a regular normal. That's our hope anyways. So I've prepared a presentation for tonight on both ARES, RACES, and SKYWARN, so across the different programs. I'm going to try to share my screen here. Looks like I can do that. And I think you guys can see my screen now. And I don't know why that's coming up. I don't want to leave the meeting. That would be bad. And pull up the presentation here. And Pi, everybody can see the presentation?
Looks good here.
All right, very good. So we'll get going here. So first of all, ARES has gone through some changes in the last couple of years. The ARES program had not changed since its inception. I believe it was in the 40s and 50s, and the program really needed to be reinvigorated with a bit more focus, some level of training, because just now partner agencies have a certain many requirements for training, and it's not just only because they want to single out amateur radio operators or anything like that. This is for all volunteers, that they want certain levels of training. And obviously for communications, there's communications-based training that I think it's good for ARES members to have. And so there's been a lot of revamp of the ARES program. First was, I'm not going to read all the words here, but they changed the mission and vision statements. It's not terribly different. It just basically talks about how we use our capabilities and our wide range of emergency and disaster communication techniques to support our partners' missions and service to the public. Kind of trying to look at it more as partner agencies versus quote unquote served agencies. It sounds like, well, what's the difference? Well, we a lot of times are partnering with agencies, so that's why there's the emphasis on that. And the vision statement is just trying to say what ARES is comprised of: organized, trained, and identified amateur radio operators that can support vital communications through partners in agencies and organizations during emergencies and disasters. We're a very effective partner, providing public service partners at all levels with radio communication expertise, capability, and capacity. And you'll notice that there isn't a ton of references about when everything fails. That doesn't mean that that doesn't happen, and certainly it does, but if we just mention that part of the mission, we're really limiting ourselves. Amateur radio can do a lot and help support things when normal means of communication are up. We can offload normal means of communication. We add resources and people to an event for communications. We can provide information, provide valuable situational awareness in various situations, and I'll talk a little bit about that here. And there's just a lot of different roles for us to play. And then when things fail, when those relationships are established, it just kind of happens seamlessly. And that's the key. I think back in the days when all else fails amateur radio, it was kind of limiting us to people just thinking of us, well, when the communications go down, we'll call the amateur operators. And then there's no question that exists. That's no question. That's one of our biggest roles. But there's a lot of other roles we can play. And if we play those roles, it makes us better suited to when all else fails. So ARES exists in almost every state. It's not a national organization. It's a component program of most ARRL sections. In Massachusetts, we have an Eastern Mass and Western Mass section. So I have a colleague, K1USN, Bob Menenguzzo, who's the Western Mass ARES SEC. He's also been involved in SKYWARN for many years, including the June 1st, 2011 tornado. And the section emergency coordinator heads the ARES program in each section. I'm sure everybody knows about SKYWARN, the National Weather Service's volunteer weather spotting program, where timely severe weather reporting to the Weather Service helps with the protection of life and property. SKYWARN is an ARES function. Some states and local areas, it is a RACES function. The training sessions, so these, even with COVID, there was training this year. It was online, and then and we kind of beefed up an online refresher quiz, so everybody could take the class or see the presentation. To become a spotter, you had a 20-question quiz to take. If it was live sessions, it was kind of done as part of the training. And there wasn't a quiz involved if you went to a live class. They were actually not going to have spotter certifications this year. I pushed back very strongly on that. I wanted us to still have a path to get people trained and get their spotter IDs to them. And our warning coordination meteorologist, Glenn Field, supported that. We came up with this stronger based online quiz. That we did a couple of sessions in May. We did one for the ARES Academy in October, an actual SKYWARN session. We have recordings of those. We are looking to try to upgrade our WX1BOX YouTube channel and put those up there so that folks could take the training at their leisure. It'll be interesting. I mean, as we get into next year, I don't see live classes happening, especially the first half of the year. Maybe something towards the fall, but I doubt it. And I think we may want to relook at how we do the training as we get into later 21 and 22. Some folks have asked for an advanced spotter class. Do we do that? Or do we do a couple of larger seminars for SKYWARN folks? This hasn't even been mentioned to the Weather Service yet, but I have a feeling we'll see some changes in how we do things post COVID, where maybe it's less of the live classes or traditional live classes that we had before COVID, and maybe some other different classes that are done live, and more of the basic classes available remotely. But we'll see how it all goes. You don't have to be an amateur operator to be part of SKYWARN, but we certainly encourage it. And spotters have varying activity levels. Sometimes it's just they spot what they see and as they go across their normal course of the day. Others will actually go out and go to the areas where the severe weather is occurring or has occurred and report the conditions that have occurred there. I'm going to throw in a couple of the big examples for this year. One was Tropical Storm Isaias. I think we were very fortunate in the Northeast for the tropical season, though we did get affected by Isaias, really a strong tropical storm where we were on the severe weather side of the system and the damaging wind side of the system. We had wind gusts anywhere between 60 and 74 miles per hour at various locations. The damage was worst out in the western part of Massachusetts and Connecticut, which was a bit closer to the storm center, but we still had wind gusts over 60 miles an hour in Fairhaven and at Northeastern University in Boston. So we did have pockets of tree and wire damage in Eastern Mass. It was worse in Western Mass. It was even worse in Connecticut. Connecticut actually had one of their highest power outage totals in history, I think eclipsing Irene in 2011. So this was a powerful system. You see a couple of the pictures here, both from amateur radio operators or relayed by them. This picture here is in Wethersfield. That's a roof torn off of an apartment complex in Wethersfield. And this was a tree through the roof of a home in Northampton, Massachusetts. And these are just a couple of several hundred pictures that we received from SKYWARN spotters and amateur radio operators from across the area. We didn't get much rain from Isaias as we were on the severe weather side of the system, and as these systems come up the coast, the heaviest rain is to the west side of the track. There were several tornado warnings issued, though really hard to determine with all the straight line wind damage if there really were any. There were a few that morning that they just didn't reach the surface based on some of the meteorological parameters, but they had to warn them based on the signatures aloft. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that here in a moment with the recent Cape Cod tornado warning that we had yesterday, which I believe was the first tornado warning ever issued by the Weather Service office in the month of November. There have been tornadoes in the month of November, from what I recall, looking at the tornadoproject.com site in the past, but this is the first tornado warning that had been issued for a given area. The derecho. So what is derecho? If you don't know what that means, it's Spanish for big wind, and it's classified when you get a very intense complex of severe thunderstorms that reach a certain intensity level and have a longevity of over 240 miles. And that's what this had on Wednesday, October 7th. It started in New York, and it raced its way through southern New England. And there were pockets of wind damage from New York all the way through. There was a large tree down right on the street, 3 houses down from my house. I just recently put up 2 HF dipole antennas. They survived the wind, so I was happy about that. You can see some of the straight line wind gusts anywhere between 40 and 85 miles an hour across its path. There was an EF0 tornado in Millis, Massachusetts from this complex of storms. The amateur radio nets were very busy with reports all across this derecho. The power outages in Massachusetts rivaled Tropical Storm Isaias. And then the top picture here is a storm damage photo from Worcester. There's a tree down on a house here. And this was right on my street, Mandel Street in New Bedford, with the tree down in front of this home, literally within walking distance of my house. I had a wind gust to 40 miles an hour at my house, and I'm sheltered a bit. That's a pretty strong wind gust for my house. There was another amateur radio weather station in New Bedford that had a wind gust over 60 miles an hour. So this gives you an idea of the winds. And again, this gives you an idea of what amateur radio operators can do in a situation. Just our natural dispersion of folks, trusted, trained folks getting reports in through the amateur radio nets, getting out and taking photos and sending them along. And then that's shared with the Weather Service. It's shared with emergency management, including state emergency management, and it's shared with the media. And then that gives us a platform to kind of raise the visibility of what amateur radio can do during cases, even when communications are up. So this presentation was very timed very well, because we got to talk about something very recent. We could talk about what happened yesterday on Cape Cod and the Vineyard. You know, this storm was very interesting in that it was such a close rival to what occurred on July 23rd, 2019. The track was very similar, maybe just a smidge to the east with that severe thunderstorm in July. The conditions and the parameters were similar, although obviously the temperatures were colder, being November, but still unusually mild with temperatures around 60 and 60 plus degrees. And I was not surprised. It was a low probability occurrence or potential, but wasn't necessarily surprised when I saw those storms organize. And when I woke up in the morning, we had you looked at just the frontal zone of heavy rain, and honestly, we got more rain than was originally thought. We were thinking about maybe an inch, inch and a half. We had a number of places well over 2 inches, and even a few spots over 3 inches of rain. So that alone kind of told you the system was a bit more dynamic, and we did get these severe thunderstorms across southeast New England. And yeah, when I woke up that morning, I was actually concerned about some of the storms in southern Rhode Island and some of the winds that were indicated aloft. They never made it to the surface. These storms got a bit more surface-based, but not close enough to get that tornado that was indicated aloft on the ground. But it was very close. You'll see here in this picture, this is from Aquina on Martha's Vineyard. The Weather Service designated that this was a funnel cloud right here. It's a still picture. Maybe it's a little hard to tell, but when I sent this photo to them that we received over Twitter, they believed this was a funnel cloud. And I think this was very close to hitting the ground, but it did not. There were numerous wind gusts between 35 and 65 miles an hour across the Cape and the islands when this moved through. If you look at the radar here, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on the science, but the reason why the tornado warning was issued is you can see this very strong wind area here going in one direction and very strong winds in the other direction here. This was a very tight couplet, as it's called, and it kind of maintained its intensity as it went through the vineyard, and that was the concern for the tornado warning. As it got closer to the Cape, they switched to a severe thunderstorm warning, and the reason here is that you don't see quite it's much more broad here. And this looked more to me like a straight line damaging wind threat. And it was. There were numerous wind gusts. Hyannis gusted to 63 miles an hour, West Dennis gusted to 61 miles an hour, and a station in Eastham, Wellfleet on Lieutenant Island gusted to 65 miles an hour. And there are numerous other smaller wind gusts. As I said, the vineyard had wind gusts up to 46 miles per hour. We did get a call, or I did get a call from Fox 25 to do an interview on air live. And this is a link to it. And I can certainly send this presentation to Pi, so if folks want to see the link and check out the video, they're welcome to. And this was an opportunity to brief the public about what's really happening on the ground. And we had a few reports, nothing terrible. It was just the wind gusts up to 46 miles per hour in the vineyard. We hadn't received any wind damage reports yet. And I think we didn't get much wind damage. We got a little bit in Brewster, as you see in the slide. I think part of the reason why we didn't is the time of year. These wind gusts happened. They were strong. They only lasted a few minutes, and it kind of dropped off very quickly. And I think between that and the fact that we don't have leaves on the trees made a big difference in the kind of damage we would get. And I think we had more pockets of damage if this had happened even just like 2 weeks ago, but it didn't. And that's why it was very isolated, and the actual bigger circulation that they tornado warned on never reached the ground. And that's what happened here in this event, unlike July, where of 2019, where we had wind gusts between 60 and 90 plus miles per hour with tornadoes on the ground, literally 3 of them. That was just a much more significant event, and it was because that circulation and those winds were able to get to the surface. Sometimes when the radar indicates there's strong winds, they don't always reach the surface, and that's why the spotter reports are so important. And in this case, some of the winds got to the ground, but not as strong as it could have been, and the actual rotation that was over the vineyard, clearly from the photo at the bottom right corner, never made it to the ground, and that's what happened. But it was definitely worth the tornado warning. You just can't take a chance in this situation. We've had cases where, it might be aloft, it may stay aloft, and it's actually made it to the ground. So it was a good warning. The process with the warnings had good lead time. It wasn't as significant as it could have been, but there was definitely some strong winds and a couple of spotty wind damage reports there. I'll make a quick commentary around RACES, the Radio Amateur Civil Emergency Services, which is part of Part 97. Obviously, there are the RACES nets that happen on the first Monday of the month when it's not a legal holiday. And we always piggyback our ARES net after the RACES nets, the monthly ARES net, which is on the MMRA repeater system. Always, everybody is welcome, whether you're an ARES member or not. These nets, there's actually regulations around for RACES around they can do monthly nets, and they can have a drill or exercise that may be conducted up to twice per year for a time window not to exceed 72 hours. And really what RACES is about being sanctioned by your emergency management director to provide communications. And it can be for public service events, shelter communications. It's all at the direction of the emergency management director at the local level, or if it's with MEMA, it's at the region office or state level. And really the relationship with MEMA is much better than what it was. There's been a lot of changes in leadership, and that's actually been good and bad. I think it's helped the relationship get better, but also there's been so many changes. It's kind of kept things, at a better place, but not been able to move forward as much. And then just when we got kind of a new leadership in place, we had a kickoff meeting on some RACES items in February. COVID hit, and obviously they had to be focused on COVID. And there've been some other changes at MEMA that I'll get into just for teams' awareness. So everybody probably remembers that MEMA Region 2 was in Bridgewater. Well, that building was actually condemned, and they actually had moved to the city of New Bedford, which is my hometown. And we were just getting to the point about talking about a permanent amateur radio station at the MEMA Region 2 office in New Bedford, when because of COVID, it really changed the dynamic of things. Warehouses for PPE and things like that really became important. And they decided to move the facility to Franklin, Mass. It was completed around the end of September. I'm actually going to talk to the Region 2 manager, who is now both MEMA Region 1 and 2 manager, James Mannion. I can tell you, James is a terrific guy. He's been in MEMA for, I think, over 10 years now, or close to that. Very much about collaborating and partner relationships and all that. I'll actually be talking to him at some point tomorrow to catch up with him, as it's been a couple of months now. So again, the office is in Franklin. It may become a bigger facility than the prior region office, both in Bridgewater and New Bedford, but that remains to be seen. The biggest thing is Mike Ledger, who is our Region 2 Races radio officer. Bridgewater and New Bedford were kind of good locations because he lives in New Bedford and he works in Cambridge, so he kind of would drive by Bridgewater if he was going to and from work. Franklin's a little bit more out of the way, so we might get some more folks from the Norfolk County area involved to help with Region 2 as they establish antennas and communications and so forth. So this is something that we'll probably be working as we get into the turn of the year. Obviously, with what's happening with COVID, there's a lot of work that MEMA's got to do there, and that's got to be the priority. Now, that said, we're getting to an interesting point, and one of the things I'll talk about towards the end of the presentation is we look into plans for 2021 is there's going to be a lot of vaccination clinics for COVID. And this might be an opportunity for us to provide radio communication support for the EMAs, for the NGOs that may be conducting these vaccination clinics as we get into next year. And obviously there's puts and takes to that, because if you're not vaccinated, how comfortable you're going to be, but maybe as part of it, some of the volunteers will get vaccinated, who knows. But this is one of the things that could come up as we get into next year as an activity that we could have on our plates from an amateur radio perspective. Coming back to ARES, and I'm going to briefly cover the leadership. So I'm the SEC. I do have an assistant, a couple of assistant SECs that report to me. Myself, I report to the section manager, Tom Walsh. I have district emergency coordinators for the various counties or in regions, and a couple folks that are focused on specific agencies. We have assistant DECs that can assist the DECs. We have emergency coordinators that cover a local area. In other states, it would be on a county basis. Our counties are so big that we use district emergency coordinators for a lot of that. ECs generally could be at a city or town level or an amateur radio club level, depending on where exactly they're connected in what they're doing. And then the EC can also have assistant ECs. Official emergency stations, a lot of that is really good, strong home stations or club stations that can provide communications, and clubs that might staff their stations in certain scenarios when they can to help with communications. And we can designate those as we see fit. And then the ARES member, and this is where some of the changes in the ARES program have occurred and were implemented over the last couple of years. There's now 3 different levels of ARES membership. And I think it's a good thing because it gives people, it pretty much keeps the program open to everybody, but you decide how far you want to go and how much time you have to do training and other things that, like I say, it's not that the league is demanding it per se. Our partner agencies want us to have it. So we want to position ourselves to be able to fulfill that. But it's for different, it depends on the roles. Certainly there are roles for amateur radio stations at home and in other places to help make things work. And then we have other people that are actually at the EOCs, the shelters, et cetera, to provide communications. And obviously with COVID right now, that is a lot more limited. They try to do as much of it remote as they can. while still having some level of staff in areas in case those communications that would allow virtual work go down. So there's the 3 different levels. There's the ARES level 1, and this is largely kind of where we can bring in folks first and kind of at a basic level. It can be requires introductory training that can be done by the local ARES group. We have emergency communications workshops that we've run in the past that we can't do the live workshops these days, but we're looking as we get into next year as one of our projects is to offer the workshop either it could be on a Saturday during the day for several hours, or chunk them up and have them on certain weeknights, 1 to 2 hours at a time, kind of like what happened with the New England ARES Academy, which is another example of kind of good introductory training to try to just get people involved, give them some level of training. And if you decide that's as much as you want to do, works perfectly fine. One of the other trainings that obviously I advocate very strongly for all is the SKYWARN training. And especially now where a lot of it is available online from our local office and you can do the quiz online, it should make that more convenient for folks. So these are some of the things that I wanted to bring up in terms of ARES membership and ARES level 1. So as I said, SKYWARN training is another good thing that we like to get folks engaged with. We then have ARES level 2, and it's all the requirements of level 1. And this is when you start to get more involved. So this is where we talk about the FEMA ICS classes, 100, 200, 700, and 800. We've advocated that in ARES for many years, and not because it's because our partner agencies, if we go to EOCs, we go to shelters, etc., and that's all volunteers, not just amateurs, these are some of the training that they want us to have. They also have mandated the ARL EC001, Introduction to Amateur Radio Emergency Communications, where there was some talk of having some level of cost involved. They made it a no-cost program for all, which is what I strongly advocated. I was part of some of the committees that helped put some of these membership levels together, and I felt very strongly it should be at no cost to folks. We encourage participants to take advantage of these and any of the other trainings that are available, but these are kind of the basics for level 2 training. And then finally, level 3 is really for when you get into the ARES coordinator positions, the leadership positions. It's everything from levels 1 and 2, the EC016, emergency communications for emergency management, which when available, which I believe it now is, and then they then advocate either ICS 300 and 400 or the FEMA Professional Development Series of courses, which is basically around how volunteer organizations play a role and how to manage volunteers. Honestly, the Professional Development Series of courses are probably better than the ICS 300 and 400 classes. Those are real. I mean, there are people in public safety that don't have those classes. There was some push to really require those classes as well. And it really, for most, even for myself, I'm not going to be running an incident for a police or fire department. And that's really what those classes are designed for. Whereas the Professional Development Series, some of those classes around volunteer organizations' roles and how to manage volunteers is actually probably a lot more applicable than the ICS classes. Now, at the time, ICS 300 and 400 were only offered in person. I wouldn't be surprised if with COVID they are now online as well. But like I said, I think it's a bit much on the training side for that. And the Professional Development Series are good for folks. And again, this is for leadership positions. So a lot of folks may want to go to an EOC. They want to help at a shelter when needed. They don't have to take these level 3 courses to do that. Like I said, that's one of the things that's great about these levels is you decide how much training you want to do and how involved you want to get. It's not that everybody's got to go through all these different levels. One of the other things I wanted to explain from an ARES perspective is we'll sometimes say that we're going to do an ARES standby. So what does that mean? It means that we're thinking there may be the potential that we would have to deploy to other agencies, hospitals, for the various non-governmental organizations, which have now here in Massachusetts and other states, there's the concept of VOADs, which are volunteer organizations active in disaster. It includes the Red Cross, Salvation Army, and a lot of church groups and other organizations from a volunteer perspective, and kind of that we may have to support some of those agencies. And if we think we need to do that, we call for an ARES standby and see who's available, who would be interested in deploying. Now, some people say, well, if that means if I join ARES, I got to go anywhere and everywhere to help with an incident. And the answer to that is no. It's up to you how far you want to go. If you want to stay in your local town or within a 2 or 3 town radius within your local town, that's fine. If you're from Marshfield as an example, and you want to go to Cape Cod for an incident there where they need help, then you can do that as well. It's up to you. You control how much you can do and what you can do, and just tell us, and plainly, but constructively, what what you're able to do. And we try to get, a lot of times a standby will be done for some of the higher end storms and severe weather when we have heads up that they're occurring, and we're trying to get that many more folks reporting in their conditions, reporting damage in their area. If they're tied with public safety or have means to monitor it, giving us reports from there, sending pictures, etc. And just get yourself prepared. Have your emergency equipment ready, batteries, generators, etc. And then tell us, like I say, where if you can deploy, when, and how far you're willing to go. And it's never required that you have to support, if you join ARES, that you have to deploy somewhere. It's again up upon your availability, what's going on with you personally, all those sorts of things. I'm going to walk through some of the plans that we've completed. I talked about the SKYWARN activations already. We've completed 3 exercises, 2 of which were at the section level. I'm going to talk a little bit about the exercise on November 14th in a little bit more detail because it was recent. We also did an exercise on May 30th. That was, there were 2 Red Cross national exercises, one on May 30th, one on November 14th. We also had on May 30th the WX4 NHC communications test, which was typically would be at the Hurricane Center with the operators there, but because of COVID, they also were operating remotely. They participated in our exercise in addition to, as part of the communications test, they were linked in on the MMRA system with the Eastern Mass section net. And that went very well. Again, I'll talk more about the drill in November in a couple of slides. We really pivoted our program quite a bit. We've done a lot of work reviewing and updating the ARES members in our Eastern Mass ARES database. We completed an Eastern Mass ARES section plan, which you can see at the link below. As I said, I can get this presentation to Pi for those who are interested. But if you go to emaarl.org/ARES section website, and you go to emergency communications or go to ARES, you'll see the program, all the happenings within ARES, and you'll see a quick link section. And under the quick link section, you'll see the section plan, which you can take a look at. It's a general framework. It's not designed to talk down to the district and local level. The ARES groups that we have at a more district and local level will eventually start developing plans that kind of reference the section plan and kind of say how they operate, because things are different. Cape Cod, it's almost like a county infrastructure there across Barnstable County, but in a lot of other parts of Massachusetts or Eastern Mass, it's at a city-town level, or it's a collection of towns at a more regional level. It depends on the area. So that's why it's kind of a more general framework and what kind of happens at a section level. And then as time goes on, we want the district and local ARES groups to kind of fill in what happens in their given areas, because they can be so different. We did a meet and greet with the Mass VOAD on November 3rd. There's a link to it here. We got to talk to a number of the agencies there. We have been a member of VOAD for quite some time, and it's become more active. And you can check out that story at that link with more details on that there. We've had a number of ARES leadership calls. I would say on average about once a month. You know, here as we gotten in the fall, it's been a little less frequent, but if you kind of average it all out, we were actually more active with calls when COVID initially hit. But if you average it all out, we're doing the calls on a monthly cadence. We appointed Joe Weiss, W1HAI, as the ARES section net manager for our Eastern Mass ARES net, again, held on the first Monday of each month on the MMRA system. And we've had a good showing of check-ins, certainly more than what we've had in the past since COVID hit. I've talked about the different SKYWARN classes that were held, 2 in May, 1 here in October. We also, with the ARES Academy, we also did a training presentation on situational awareness and ground truth. And the YouTube link below has a link to the classes that I mentioned, plus the many others that were run by many different instructors. So you can check that out at that YouTube channel. One of the other things I want to talk about is the earthquake that we had on November 8th, just south of New Bedford. So not far from my house. I could tell you that it was the most shaking I had ever felt from an earthquake in my life. It wasn't California, but it was certainly like it was typically when we've had a quake, right? You kind of feel it and you say, was that a truck that went by? Did something fall in the house? When this hit near my area, it was done. It was pretty much no question in my mind. It was an earthquake. It was about 5 or 6 miles from my house, you know, and the shaking was it was 2 bangs and then rumbling for about, I don't know, 15 or so seconds, maybe a little bit longer. And I mean, it was enough shaking where I could see the stuff rattling on the walls and rattling around the house. Nothing fell down or anything like that. You know, there was quite a bit of a response for a few hours in the South Coastal area. Police and fire departments, monitoring scanners were running around for different calls around gas leaks. And there was minor damage to 3 homes in the smokestack chimney area. And that's what these pictures are here. You can see damage right around the gas main here. Some of the brick and the brick here was shifted and fallen onto the ground here. These were from some of the 3 homes on Crapo Street. And these homes, the people had to be displaced. I don't know for how long, but the Red Cross was involved, and these people were displaced for a time. It was about 20 people. And to give you an idea, Crapo Street is about a mile from my house, and I have a very close friend that's on that street who luckily had no damage at his house. You definitely, you know, our homes and our construction are older, certainly not earthquake proof. So I'm sure that was part of this, but you know, this kind of damage you don't normally see from earthquakes in New England. You'd have to go back to the 1920s with the Cape Ann fall in Boston to see some of this kind of damage, and that was at a more widespread level. So, and these damage photos were from N1IXC Joe Krasnowski, who relayed them from these pictures that were taken by New Bedford Emergency Management. So, again, just gives you an idea. It's been a very interesting 2020 to be sure, and this was just another example. We did have an ARES net up for about 2 hours. It was a lot around situational awareness. We provided some of the damage information out on our social media. We provided it to the Weather Service, who had included it in their earthquake report, because the Weather Service issues earthquake reports when they occur. And the information was shared with the United States Geological Survey. You can report whether you felt it or not, and provide those reports in there. So it was a good use of time and a good way to kind of show the ARES aspect of things. And we had about 10 or 11 stations check in and monitor things, which was pretty impressive for something that had no warning, no pre alerting at all. People just got on the air, which was very good. Now a little bit on the simulated emergency test from a couple of weeks ago. This was done also in coordination with a National Red Cross exercise. Messages were sent by Cape Cod ARES to National Red Cross. Rough numbers, over 100 stations had checked into the various nets on HF, the Eastern Mass ARES section net on the MMRA system, which included the New England Reflector along with various local ARES groups. I did set up my WinLink, not just through the internet, but also through radio. This is my ham shack here, and I show some of the station equipment here. I had my computer connected here to this radio here, which I could use for both voice and digital. These cases you see here, these are Go kits that Frank O'Laughlin, WQ10, has made for himself and for many amateurs in his ARES group and other groups. I've gotten several from him, and I had these all set up. We also had, I've done a lot of work on my home station because typically I'd be at the weather service or some agencies during events. So one of the things I had to pivot to this year was to improve my home station. So I now have 2 HF dipoles that can be tunable across the different HF bands. I have a new scanner disc cone antenna that I put up. My VHF UHF is in pretty good shape, but my antennas are pretty, and feed line are pretty old, probably about 20 years old, and eventually looking to replace that to have a completely revamped station. That was part of what I wanted to test out for the drill for myself personally, as long as with being a part of the leadership, and everything worked very well. Was able to hit a number of VHF, UHF repeaters, did some testing on simplex, was able to get in on the net on HF. Also did WinLink email digitally via radio, and 24 emails were kind of received and sent back and forth with the system. So that worked out very well. And so that was a good use of time, and we'll eventually get the full report out here in the coming weeks. The remaining things we're looking at doing the rest of this year, we're going to be talking with Braintree Emergency Management this Saturday at 10 a.m. Rob Millette is an amateur operator, and I've also known him for a number of years. I know he became the director when Bob James retired. So we're setting that up for this Saturday to probably be a lot of this material that I'm presenting to you guys here. We also have SKYWARN Recognition Day coming up, which will be adjusted for format for COVID this next Saturday, December 5th, 0 to 2400 hours UTC. So Friday evening, December 4th, 7 p.m. through Saturday, December 4th, or December 5th at 7 p.m. So a number of a couple of more events left to go this year. And that's the other thing with SKYWARN operations. We have not been at the weather service. We have not been there all year because of COVID. We didn't have any activations before March. And then when that hit, we've been operating everything remotely and funneling information through the NWS chat program. We have had talks of if we had something very significant, would we look at some, very limited crew into the office? But we haven't gotten to that threshold, although there definitely were a few events where we had so much data coming in. It sure would be nice to have been there for that, but we just haven't gotten there yet because of the situation with COVID. As we look to next year, we're looking to have another 2 or 3 exercises. There is a system called ARES Connect, a volunteer management system that we have not brought into our operations yet in Eastern Mass. We're looking to do that maybe as we get into next year after we assess it. We're going to look at a revision of the section plan to cover the ARES ID policy along with some other items. I mentioned the ARES training that we're looking at doing, along with maybe another couple of SKYWARN sessions that we can do virtually. Again, support mass races. Again, I'll be talking with James Mannion from Region 1 and 2 offices tomorrow and see where things are there. And then, as I mentioned before, with the COVID vaccination clinics, that could be an opportunity for us to provide communications. So I mentioned that we could potentially be doing that as we get into the middle part of next year, depending the logistics. These are all the links of the different resources on SKYWARN and ARES, including some of the information around the changes around around ARES and the strategic plan that was implemented here within the last couple of years. So these are just reference links for everybody. And I just want to thank everybody for their time. For anybody that's already in ARES and SKYWARN and has done public service, it's very much appreciated, and hopefully more folks will be interested. I hope this was informative for folks, and I also hope I run at the right pace for folks. It's kind of hard to tell looking at things virtually here. So with that, I will stop there and we'll look to take any questions.
Rob, it's Henry, K1USN. I have a question for you.
Yes.
Do you think after the COVID emergency is essentially over, that we'll go back to the public service types of activities that we've been doing? Like, for example, as you might know, I think public service is one of the best training opportunities for ARES members. And I'm thinking of the marathon, for example. Is their communications needs likely to change after COVID? Also, there's Head of the Charles, other big events that amateur radio has served in the past. What do you think about that?
I don't think anything will change there. I can tell you that we've been in contact with, over the last few months. Blair Sutherland is the communications coordinator for the Boston Marathon. Some of you may know him. He was the director of telecommunications for the state police. We've had conversations, a couple conversations with him already, even though the marathon's not happening in April, looking at, hey, there's some, we always have kind of a list of things that we always want to kind of work on that we haven't been able to get to. Can we get to some of those things? Now, obviously, there's a lot of other things going on too now because of COVID, and everybody's work situation is different, but we're looking to try and to do those things. My opinion is, I don't know what's going to happen next year. So they haven't announced next year's plan yet. Will there be a marathon later in the year, and what will it look like that's live? I don't know what's going to happen there. I think whenever they get to a normal large gathering scenario again, whenever that is, I'm thinking, which will probably be 2022. It might be bigger, for one, because people are going to want to get out again. And this is me kind of being speculative. This isn't like I know anything that they're doing, but I'm just being speculative. I think the event will likely be bigger, and I think that's going to mean, if anything, that much more need for people. And I also think people are going to be itching to get out there and do public service again. We didn't have it this year. We're probably not going to have much of any next year. Maybe when we get to the fall, there's a chance, but I'm not thinking there's going to be much going on through the spring and early summer. Maybe as you get to the fall, and I think 2022 is going to be a big year of public service. I don't think it changes I don't think it changes a ton. I think it's still, and if anything, it might be bigger. A lot of these events that have not been able to happen this year might not happen, especially if it's in the first half of next year. I think they'll be bigger, and they're going to want that many more volunteers. I think that's where it's going to go. I could be wrong, but I think that's where it goes. And I think there'll be that many more people wanting to get out there and do stuff, because everybody's been cooped up and doing things this way for so long, and it's going to go on, I think, longer. So I think it's going to be it's going to end up being a bigger deal, and we'll definitely need the 280 we've always needed. And I don't know if we'll get more, but certainly I don't see it affecting how we do things, because I think the motivation of like the Boston Marathon, they want to get back to a live event. They may have to grin and bear it one more year. I don't know, but I think if they do that, then they might make 2022 a really big deal. Because if you think about it, we're approaching the 125th anniversary, which is a big deal. So I think if anything, it's going to be a bigger deal, and then it will kind of get back to more normal levels again. But I think some of these big events and some of these public service events, it's actually going to be big after they're allowed to do things, and then they'll kind of get back to normal size again.
Okay, thank you.
Now, Rob, I would think that with what you're saying there about things like the marathon, and needing the communications that they've, at least what they've had in the past, and probably more, but maybe during this ensuing year or whatever it is, that's probably going to present some good recruiting opportunities, that this would be a time to really get out there and exactly what you're doing here now, where you're having this chance to talk with a group of us, and we're going to post it online and everything. But I'm wondering what like what could we do as a club to help promote ARES and people getting involved with the training, and with a mind of looking forward to what's going to happen a year from now or a year and a half from now.
Well, so first of all, even before we get to a year and a half from now, I could tell you that, you know, one of the things that's different, right, is, as I said, we're not at the Weather Service during activation. So, and even when we're there, we always kind of have a need for net controls and folks to monitor the local area repeaters for any stations that have reports, and also monitor local public safety, et cetera, for reporting. We could certainly, we can always use help there on the different frequencies, providing help, and then funneling it in to us on the frequencies and such that we're able to monitor. I can tell you, we there, you know, during the Derecho, you know, it was just a choke point, because typically I'd be at the Weather Service with at least one or two other people handling things, and now we're kind of, I might be handling stuff wherever I'm at, and I have another amateur at another station at his virtual, you know, his home station handling things, and it gets it, you know, and then we can cover things, but we can't, you know, maybe I can't hit certain repeaters that are out of range of the New Bedford area, or in the Taunton, New Bedford area. So, you know, there's you know, so I think help in that area can happen, and we can use it. We can use that kind of now as we get into public service. I think you raise an excellent point, which I'm actually going to think about taking back to our committee, which is in the ham radio committee, which is, why not get our volunteer base of marathon hams and those that are interested in volunteering for the marathon to a Zoom session that we do, you know, and heck, maybe we do it the weekend when the marathon was supposed to be next year. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
Excellent idea, Pi, and certainly something I'll take back and raise to folks, because I think it can raise the bar and get that many more people engaged. From an ARES standpoint, the online application is on our EMA-ARL.org ARES website. I believe that's also in the quick links. It's also on the page which lists all the leaders. You sign up there, look at the ARES Academy training that was just done. That was very well done. Many great topics there that people can watch, and they can watch it at their leisure. I mentioned the SKYWARN training, taking that. Those are the activities that can fill your time and at the comfort in your own home right now. Those are things that you can also do to prepare and prepare your home stations. You know, like I said, my home station, I won't say it was in complete disarray, but other than VHF, UHF, I didn't have much else going on, because typically I'd be at the Weather Service, I'd be at a town EOC, I'd be wherever providing whatever we were providing. Now, obviously, I'm using that home station a lot more. I used it yesterday, and so I've made a lot of improvements there that I always wanted to make, but it was always tabled by the 10 other events that were going on. So I tabled to improving my home station, and I'm happy I did. I can tell you, I come into my little, which is also my work office area, so to speak. And, you know, I'm very proud of how all that's set up now and working, and you know, when we have an event like we had yesterday or some of these other events, it's been great to kind of use it to its full potential. So that's another thing that you can do. Those are the things I can think of readily here.
So you're going to be, you know, as I said, we're recording this, of course, and all of the links are displayed, but were you going to send us the PowerPoint too, so that we'll have the ability to, okay, for all the clickable links. Okay. That's awesome. And then tell me, I have a ton of questions, but I'm not going to go through them all now. I want other people to have a chance. But if people, like I myself, I certainly had the SKYWARN training. It's been a while. The idea of a refresher, I think, is a great idea. I did the SKYWARN training twice, but it's been a while. But during weather events, and I thank you very much for not mentioning that four-letter word snow during any of your presentation, but that's an inevitability as we approach this winter season. When weather events start, and usually a lot of times you don't have, like with earthquakes or whatever, you don't have warning. But if people, even people that don't have any training, if they'd like to start to get involved in the sense of just being able to listen, do you have a suggested list of frequencies on HF, VHF, IRLP? I know you have like the New England reflector that gets activated, or on Echolink. Is there a handy link list that you have that you would suggest for people to listen to during an event?
Yeah, if you go to wx1box.org, and I'll just pop it up here real quick on the screen share. But if you go to wx1box.org and you go right here, this is the frequency list. Now, it probably needs a bit of updating, but it's still got most of the key frequencies in here. And this is probably something that we'll be updating here in the next few weeks. In the area, certainly Bridgewater is one of our key repeaters, and Whitman is an alternate. We also have the Walpole repeater for parts of Norfolk County, and we do have Waltham in Boston. And Waltham was active during the Derecho event a month ago. So, so that's a list of the frequencies. We have some of the training resources here, and actually, we probably should change the video here because we have some updates. You can see the online quiz. You can actually see some of the forecast products. So you can see a bunch of information that's available here on the site. We also post our weather coordination messages here. We also have a SKYWARN announcement list that if folks are interested in. They can email me offline and we can get them added to the list. But this is and the other thing I'll mention is for those that don't get trained, we'll take your reports. And if you're looking for what kind of reports, understanding the training gives more background and more information around these things. We have the reporting criteria right up here on the website as well. So you can look through that and at least have some idea of what to report, when and how and all that. So that's the information here.
Oh, there's a wealth of information up there. Then that's great with those frequencies now. And does that web page, and I haven't brought that up here yet, but does that also have like things about the IRLP, the New England reflector, and also any HF information?
So it definitely has the IRLP reflector information. Actually, we have HF as well, so you can see them. You can see them all here.
Oh, good. Okay, and now I know that this isn't something that happens on a event basis, but Henry is one of the people. Henry K1USN that spoke earlier. He's one of the people that's involved in that daily weather net. Now, do you guys? Is that something that you guys have any kind of a tie-in with or liaison? Yep. Or what? Maybe you talk about that a little.
Yeah, so we do tie in to the Cape and Islands WeatherNet on Monday to Saturday. I try to get into it when I can. If I don't get into it, the net management team, when criteria is read, will send us a message with all the data from that net. We also will do the same with the Fairhaven WeatherNet Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. So we do tie into the regular weather nets and provide information. And now that I have HF, I could potentially even monitor or I know there's different rules on the check-ins there, but I can definitely monitor at least the New England WeatherNet on HF as well. So we will tie into those when we need to. So so that's another thing that we work closely on. And as I said, during the snowstorms in particular, and some of the more significant rain events and wind events, I will try to check into the Cape and Islands WeatherNet in the morning and gather that data and add that to the list of data that comes in.
Oh, okay, that's great. Yeah, and I was when I grew up, it became a ham in the early '60s. There was the New England WeatherNet, and I was very close to very close proximity to Don Kent's store that he had in North Weymouth, the Weather Shack, and he used to listen. He would occasionally listen to the WeatherNet every morning, the New England WeatherNet, and sometimes give the reports. I remember, and that kind of peaked people's interest when you would hear these references like that to ham radio. What the heck was this ham radio thing with this guy that's way up in and it's 30 below up in Maine? So fascinating. All right, I'm going to let you I'm going to mute myself and let anybody else do any questions, because it's just a ton of stuff here. I think weather's a fascinating subject, and we all have to live with it every day. So everybody, anybody that's got anything to say, go ahead.
Yeah, Bill K1USN. Several years ago, I think 20 years ago, you guys came to Braintree and we actually recorded it. And I think it was like 25 or 30 that took the SKYWARN test at that time and passed. But I'd just like to thank you for taking the time tonight for the presentation. Excellent presentation.
No, thank you guys again for having me, and glad to be here to present and provide any answers to the questions here.
Rob, I said I was going to mute, but you know, early on, they used to always talk about, oh, there was a tornado in Worcester, the Worcester tornado, and obviously very serious. But I don't remember hearing anything about any other tornadoes until within the last 15 or 20 years. So is it just that we do better reporting, or has there been a shift in the weather conditions here in New England that make us more ripe for tornadoes?
No, it's really just better well, I mean, there could be some incremental increase. I mean, I haven't looked at the data all that closely, but I think definitely better reporting, because a lot of if there used to be a time where it was said that of the tornadoes we'd get in New England, we were one of the highest in terms of getting the bigger tornadoes, even though they happen less frequently. And I think over time, the Weather Service has not shown that graphic anymore, and I don't think they have, because I think now with better spotter networks, better technology, we're identifying a lot more of the EF0 weaker tornadoes than we ever have in our history. And so I think some of these events that may have been classified as straight line winds are being classified as EF0 tornadoes, because we have the evidence and the information and the technology to show that. An example is the May 9th, 2013 Stoughton tornado. That would have been straight line winds, no question about it, but there was a video that showed the funnel on the ground, and also when they went to look at the damage, they could see the trailers in that auto garage in Stoughton that were turned in different directions. And we had enough information. I'd sent an amateur radio spotter to that area, and he remember, he called me, he says, well, I'm not seeing anything here. I don't think anything happened. And then once he got closer to into the area that was actually affected, because it was a fairly small isolated area, said, oh, this is where it is, and oh, I saw the video where the funnel touched down, and that got classified as an EF0 tornado. I don't, that probably 20 years ago would not have been classified that, because we wouldn't have had the evidence. And so I think there's definitely some of that going on. But I think we've also seen an uptick, especially in the last, I wouldn't say 20 years, but in the last 5 or 6 years around tornadoes. I mean, in 2018, we had 11 tornadoes, including 4 in October. So, and that's, I would classify that as unusual, but not unprecedented, because when I went back and looked at tornadoproject.com, I found events in October where if you divided up our coverage area the same way, we had that many tornadoes on a single day in October, and I was shocked. I really thought, well, this is unprecedented. And we only have tornado records to 1950. So I think there may be a little bit of an uptick, but I think it's just better technology, but I also think technology is playing a role. More spotters is playing a role. Better information getting into the Weather Service is playing a role. And again, if you look at a lot of the tornadoes we had, they've all been EF0, EF1. Many of them have been EF0, EF1 tornadoes in the last few years. So on the weaker end of things, the EF1s would probably be found out. Some of these EF0s, they're very narrow. They may show a very weak level of rotation, such that it may be hard to determine the damage. But then if you get some physical, visual evidence, then it makes it that much easier to classify it. So I think I'd side more with technology and better networks, and maybe a small increase, especially I'd say in the last 3 or 4 years. Even last year we had 5 tornadoes, and 3 happened on the Cape, and all 3 happened in one day, which effectively doubled the number of tornadoes on Cape Cod. That was teetering on maybe unprecedented. So maybe a bit of an uptick, but I think more around the better reporting and technology.
So the collection of data is so important, and it bears out when you have this 70-year span of time that you're able to analyze things and come up with an answer like that. So that's fantastic. You know, I want to thank you. I hope I don't know if anybody else has any questions here, but I think we all should, after this, take a look over at the WX1BOX website and kind of go right through some of the things that you talked about, where there was a lot of videos that are linked off of that webpage. So I think we all have some homework to do, Rob.
Yeah, and we're going to be revamping the video page. It's getting pretty old, and they're kind of in the video.nsradio.org page. We do have a YouTube channel for WX1BOX. We got to put some more content and some of the content from that page up there, and that's one of the COVID projects, so to speak. One of those things we've been wanting to do and get our hands on that we haven't done yet, but that we're going to try to get our hands on doing before things kind of revert back to normalcy, with, like Henry mentioned, a lot of public service events coming back again and all that. You know, if we can use this time to kind of get a lot of these other things done and use that time to view these things and prepare, when public service and all these things come back, we'll be that much more ready and probably anxious to go do those things. So we'll be doing some of that as well. And again, I appreciate everybody's time, and very happy Thanksgiving to everybody as well, because it's hard to believe just a couple of days away. And I know it may be different than what we're used to, but hopefully everybody has a great and happy and safe Thanksgiving. And looking forward to talking to everybody on the air and in other forums soon.
Oh, I really do appreciate this. Can you just give us one thing? You mentioned something about social media, and I'm guessing that you have at least this talking about a Facebook page that people may would want to put on if they do get on Facebook, that they would want to link to and keep track of some of the updates that you have on there. So just briefly, is there a set of links that you would suggest that we check out as far as social media?
Yeah, so I put that slide up here. So we have a WX1BOX Facebook page that you can like, a Twitter feed that you can follow. Same thing with Eastern Mass ARES. And when I send you the slide deck, Pi, you'll be able to send that around, and folks can check out these links as well.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Oh, that's great. Great. Thank you. Anybody else with any questions here? And maybe Rob will tell you when the first measurable plowable snowstorm is going to be. Anybody got any questions?
We already had that. It was October 30th.
Good. See, you know what you're doing. See that? You got the right answer. It was a trick question.
Hey, Rob, Mike, WA1MB. Excellent and thorough presentation. Appreciate it. One question. Approximately how much time is invested to complete level 1 and level 2 of ARES?
Well, level 1 is kind of more free form. So, you know, it depends. Like if you did the New England ARES Academy and all the sessions, it'd be a bunch of sessions. It'd probably be, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 days worth of classes that, you know, if you stitched them all together and did them all at once type of thing. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't necessarily, for level 1, it's kind of more free form. You know, you could take whatever you feel like. The level 2 is where you get to the 100, 200, 700, 800 and EC001. I would say that the EC001 might be the most involved. And I believe there's a bunch of exercises and such to complete. It's probably something that you do 1 day a week for several weeks. The 100, 200, 700, 800, probably if you sat down and just, again, stitched it all together, did it all, it's probably a couple or 3 days worth of training. So probably looking at for level 2 and anything you might do for level 1, and you throw in the SKYWARN training in there, which is about 2.5 hours or so. It's probably about, if you sat down and said, I'm going to just do this for however long it takes, it's probably like a couple or 3 weeks of training. And as I said, it doesn't really work that way. You'll probably chunk it up over time, but that's how it works. If you become level 2 ARES, or you want to get to that level, you have a good year or so to kind of complete all that. So you got plenty of time to kind of work that. And I say now, because Henry raised an excellent point earlier, public service is the best way to train. We don't have that right now. So the next best thing is to get all these training courses out of the way. Now's a good time to do it. And it's all computer based. And I see we do have Rob from Braintree Emergency Management on, and he in 300 and 400, if folks were interested in taking it, is also available online as well.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, hey Rob, just a quick follow-up to that. Larry here, W1VP. I second the motion. Great, as always, a great presentation. You do these tremendous presentations. I've seen it a couple of different times over the years. The ARES training classes that Mike mentioned a minute ago, are those open for any of us to take? Is there a sign-up process? And
so the ARES Academy ones are all online, available for free, and there is no cost for the ARES training. There is no cost for those ICS classes either from FEMA. They're all free, so no costs involved, and you can get involved with them and take them as they the computer-based one, you can take them anytime you want. With ECO01, there may be some lead times if they are assigning mentors and stuff, which I believe they still are, but that's all on the ARRL.org website.
okay, great. Thanks very much, Rob.
Anybody else in there? I didn't hear you mention APRS. Now, is that something that that you make use of?
Well, I mean, the APRS, putting a weather station on APRS is very beneficial. I'll definitely mention that. And they can also get ingested over the internet as well as part of the APRS CWAP network. So that has a role. I mean, there's a lot of things. There's APRS, there's DMR, which I have a lot of DMR capability. I haven't really played around with it enough yet. That's another thing on my bucket list of things to do while we're in this kind of mode that I want to get under my belt as well. I got my HF going. DMR is kind of next on the list. So is the narrowband emergency messaging system protocols, which I have played with and got up and running a couple times. I haven't used it in a while. I want to get that going. These are the things I'm trying to use this time of no public service, not a lot of the things we're traditionally used to being up, to get some of those things up and running so that when they're there, I can do those things. So, so that's, for your, so those are, so APRS, it's in the mix. DMR, working on getting it into the mix. There's even ways now to combine DMR, get DMR connected, at least on the Brandmeister side, to Echolink and IRLP. We've done that with the VoIP Hurricane Net. We may do that on the New England Reflector eventually. So that's another thing that that can be done, at least with Brandmeister. I know there's still NECEDN, which is different DMR setup, but even there, I want to get that part going as well. So there's I'll tell you, I haven't been bored with COVID hitting. It's just what I would be normally doing isn't happening, and I'm doing all these other things that I've been wanting to do that I haven't had the time for because of the regular activities. So I'm happy to kind of get to those things and get them going.
The reason I asked about the APRS, because we have an APRS node over at a station over at our club station, and we've talked about adding weather capability for quite some time, and I think it's time to talk and make the move and get that done, because I think that would be it's a good system, and it's something that the more people that are out there doing it, the better. One last question. I noticed that Peter was on frequency here, and Peter, KC1 HHO, who's involved with Eastern Mass, the national traffic system. And I would think that if you as far as becoming trained, receiving the training to learn all about the weather practices and everything, actual hands-on getting on the air in a net, in learning to handle traffic, routine traffic on a regular basis would probably be something else that would be worthwhile to do. So I think we're going to, in the future, we're going to look to see about having a presentation on traffic handling. I think that might be something worthwhile for people that are involved, that want to be involved in reporting weather.
Well, right, and I think we have even as part of the drills, we had Marcia, KW1U, and others. Joe, W1HAI, is also a traffic handler, and I've handled traffic in the past. In fact, I did a lot of the NTS nets in the late 90s. Haven't more recently, but have done NTS work in the specifically to their nets and on a routine basis in the late 90s. So so that's definitely another play in the things. Being able to handle it by voice, but also having an ability to handle that traffic digitally between WinLink and NBEMS and so forth is also very helpful. So that's another thing that's tied into this, and Marcia and others are participated in both the SET in November and the exercise in May as well.
Good. Well, I was going to reach out to her and see which direction we could go as far as getting a presentation put together. So thanks again. I can't thank you enough, but hopefully there's going to be some fruit. This will help bear some fruit for you also. You and people that are doing what you do, that have been doing what you're doing for so many years, that maybe you can come up with some people that are going to show some more interest in it.
Absolutely, and we're happy to talk with folks and get folks active. And one thing I'll mention is, obviously, with the way things are, reach out to questions. If you don't hear from us right away, just be a little patient and don't hesitate to ping us again. It's not that we're not interested, just everybody's under kind of a different mode of operation these past few months, and it's constantly changing and different. So just don't hesitate to reach out again. Everybody's happy to help, and we definitely want to get more folks involved.
Excellent. Well, that's great. So hopefully we've helped you in some way there. We appreciate it, Rob.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for their time. Again, happy and safe Thanksgiving to all, and we'll talk to everybody soon.